Hi, Kris Vallotton here from Bethel Church in Redding, California. I'm so excited to be able to talk to you about prophetic ministry, and I'm so excited to be a part of Julian's school, and I hope that you're learning a ton there. I want to talk today about moving from prophetic ministry to prophetic culture. And I want to first of all give you this example in 1 Samuel chapter 9 and 10. There was a young man named Saul, and you may remember that he eventually becomes King Saul. And his father has lost his donkeys, and he's out looking for his father's donkeys. And on the way there, they look and they don't find donkeys. And his servant says to Saul, "Hey, I think there's a prophet in this next town. Maybe he knows where our donkeys are." Now, first of all, before we go on, I want to say, wouldn't it be awesome if we could get back to just that, where the police have a missing child, or they're trying to solve some kind of a murder mystery, and they go, "Let's go down to the church where they got the prophets there. They will know who committed that crime, or who took that child, or where that child is at." I would love for us just to get back just to having the reputation that the Old Testament prophets had, from the standpoint they had a connection with God and they knew stuff no one else knew. But let's go on. So in the meantime, God speaks to Samuel, the prophet, and he says, "Hey, there's a young man coming here. He's looking for donkeys, and you're going to anoint him king." So in the meantime, they end up at Samuel's house. Saul ends up at Samuel's house with his right-hand guy. And they say, "Hey, do you know where the prophets are? The prophet is. We heard there's a prophet in this town." And without having any more information than that, Samuel says to Saul, "Hey, I'm the prophet you're looking for. And by the way, your donkeys have been found." He didn't even tell him he was missing donkeys, but he said, "Your donkeys have been found. And I want you to stay with me, for tomorrow morning, I'm going to tell you all that's in your heart. I'm going to tell you all that's in your heart. For aren't you the one that all of Israel is waiting on? I'm going to tell you everything that's in your heart. For aren't you the one that all of Israel is waiting on?" And when Saul hears that message, he responds by saying, "Well, I don't know why you're talking to me like this. Like, I'm from the smallest tribe, and I'm the smallest family, the smallest tribe. And Saul has a big S on his chest, but it stands for small, not Superman. And he does not understand the call of God on his life." So Samuel said, "Tomorrow morning, I'm going to tell you all that's in your heart." Now, the first thing I'd like to say is, did you notice that he said, what I'm about to tell you tomorrow is already in your heart? Interesting. 1 Corinthians chapter 14 says this: if an unbeliever or ungifted man enters into your congregation and you prophesy over him, he'll be convicted by all. He'll be called to account by all. And he will fall on his face. Oh, and the secrets of his heart will be revealed. And he will fall on his face and say, "God is certainly among you." You'll be convicted by all. Did you see that? He'll be convicted. He'll be convicted. He'll be called to account. And the secrets of his heart will be revealed. Now, I used to think that prophetic ministry called out the secrets. He was convicted. They called out the secrets of a man's heart. In other words, his secret sins. And I, for years, would call out people's sins, even in the congregation, even in a public meeting. And I realized one day that when I called out their sins, their secret sins, they never fell on the floor and said, "God is certainly among you." They would run out, they would cry, they would scream, anything but anything besides feeling encouraged. And I realized years later, after I had this encounter, that 1 Corinthians 14 wasn't talking about their secret sins. It was back to this whole idea of heart, where Samuel says to Saul, "Tomorrow morning, I'm going to tell you what's in your heart." And Saul says, "Why are you talking to me like this? Like, I'm from the smallest tribe, and I'm from the smallest family, the smallest tribe." And his small his small thinking, maybe his disillusion with life, maybe his challenge with his relationships, maybe his failures, maybe even his sins. His heart did not understand the call of God. And now Samuel says, I'm going to tell you what's in your heart tomorrow morning. And the next morning, 1 Samuel chapter 10, he anoints Saul as king. Now, this is profound and powerful, and we're getting to the part that I think is really important for us as leaders in this whole prophetic movement. He anoints him king. Remember, king was in his heart, but the secret of him being king wasn't just a secret to the people around him. It was a secret to his own heart. God said, I'm going to do something with you, and I already put it in your heart. But the challenge is, he did not know what was in his heart, because the S on his chest did not stand for Superman. It stood for small man. When 1 Corinthians says an unbeliever, ungifted man comes into your congregation and you prophesy over him and he's convicted by all, he's held to account by all, and the secrets of his heart are revealed, he's not talking about the secrets of sin. He's talking about the secrets of identity. That God has put an identity in everyone. He made all of us in the image and likeness of God. And the challenge is that some people just don't know it. And prophecy calls out the gold that's in the middle of the dirt of people's life. Let me say that again. Prophecy calls out the gold that's in the midst of the dirt of people's lives. Prophecy calls out the gold in people that happens to be in the midst of the dirt of their life. See, anybody can find sin in a sinner's life. But it takes a prophetic perspective to actually see greatness inside someone who's wearing a small S on their chest, when God's actually called them to something better. It's not hard to find greatness in someone who already looks great. The challenge is to find greatness in someone who looks like a loser. Can you find greatness in a Saul? Can you look at a man who's out looking for donkeys, and can he find his destiny in your culture? But let's go on, because there's more. So Samuel says to Saul, okay, you're going to be a king. You're going to be a king. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to go down. I want you to go down over here to this mountain. And you're going to meet some prophets. You're going to meet some prophets who are coming down from the mountain, and they're doing things like worshiping. They're doing things like praying. And when you meet the prophets, this is the most powerful thing. You've got to love this part. You're going to be changed into another man. You're going to be changed into another man. See, here we go. The difference between prophetic ministry and a prophetic culture. See, in prophetic ministry, I can give you a word. So prophetic ministry, I can tell you what God's call is on your life. But what happens when you encounter prophetic culture? See, the challenge is that I can tell you all about what God has for you in prophetic ministry. But I'd propose that we don't just need prophetic ministry. We need a prophetic culture that can actually change people into another man. Because here's the deal. Saul didn't just need a prophetic word to reveal the secrets of his heart. He actually needed a change of heart to actually become a king. That's why I say to people, like, your destiny is in your people. Your destiny is in your people. See, God designed people to be interdependent. When we give people a vision, or when I have a vision that doesn't need other people, when we get prophetic words that are absent from context, what I'm getting at is anytime someone separates themselves from the body, they cut themselves off from their actual purpose, because everyone's asking the question, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? And the first question is, who are you supposed to be with? Because see, if I'm a hand, it might be good that I know the knee, but if I don't have a relationship with the arm, I actually don't have a destiny. And this is what we're building, guys, girls. This is what we're building. I've been a part of prophetic ministry for more than 40 years, giving people prophetic words, calling things out on people. And by the way, we want to continue to do that. But I'd like to say that that's like throwing seed. The sower went out to sow seed, and the seed was, quote, the word of God. The word seed there is the Greek word sperma. We get our word sperm from it. We're throwing seed out on ground. But how many know that Paul said, I am laboring until Christ is formed in you? What I'm getting at is that seed needs a womb. That seed needs a womb of the dawn, so to speak, as the psalmist wrote, in the womb of the dawn. That seed needs to incubate in a culture of family where covenant sort of relationships and community feed that baby, and that baby can grow into a man-child, a woman-child, so to speak. I'm talking about discipleship. I'm talking about community. I'm talking about the fact that Samuel said to Saul, when you meet these prophets, you connect with these prophets, you're going to be changed into another man. My concern is that we're teaching people how to do something but not be something, and we're teaching people how to be something at times without a community connection, because sometimes the prophets feel like they are outside the camp. I think sometimes the prophets are out here, here's the camp, and sometimes the prophets feel like they're out here telling the pastors and the shepherds, we're ministering from outside the camp. And I'm like, it's not good, folks. We can't create a prophetic culture being outside the camp. The Bible says in Ephesians chapter 4, as you know, that he gave some as apostles and prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers to equip the saints to do the work of service. How many understand that your job isn't just to throw some prophetic words into the church camp over here and, have some nice words to say to people, or some correctional words as it's been coming so much lately to people, which I tell you, we'll talk about that in a minute. The goal is not to be out here throwing some words into the church. The goal is to be in here, actually inside, and actually helping to create a prophetic culture where people don't just hear prophetic words, but they actually have the culture around them that the seed can actually take root in and grow. This is called discipleship. It's called a family. And one of the concerns I have as a father is I see people getting more and more disconnected. Way out here. We're way out here. And when we lose relationship with leadership and with the body and with the people we're called to, it's so easy to make judgments about people that you actually have no ownership with. And one of the most powerful principles of leadership is ownership. And that means that I actually have a place, I have a people. I'm actually not just tossing words into the church. I'm actually have ownership of this church. I don't mean I necessarily have a place of authority from the standpoint like this is my church. I mean, I don't say their church. This is when I talk to the pastor of my church, I don't say, yeah, and pastor, your church. I say our church, not because I'm changing my verbiage, but because I've changed my heart. And I'm saying these challenges that we have, these aren't your challenges, these are our challenges. This whole thing of ownership and becoming part of a community is so big in the prophetic community. And one of the things I want to see happen is I want this yellow line I drew, this be the church right here, and we are in the midst of the church. The prophets and the prophetic people are in the midst. We're in the church, and we're actually doing relationship with people, and we're creating, if you will, the womb of the dawn, so that when people come into that, they don't just get prophetic words, but there's actually cultivating, there's actually feeding the word, there's actually pruning the words, it's actually taking care of the garden, so to speak. Can you imagine somebody thinking, I remember there was a particular basketball player that I read this in the Sports Illustrated, that he was bragging about the fact that in his 15 years of playing basketball, that he slept with, he said he lost count, over 1,000 women. And he said, I don't know how many women I impregnated. It's like, that's not fatherhood. That's a sperm donor. And what I'm getting at is that the prophetic movement needs fathers and mothers who actually have some skin in the game. They actually care about the people they're ministering to, and they actually see the fruit of their ministry so that they can adjust and make sure that it's kind of like we're processing how are we doing, as like we are with our children. We don't just read a book and do what the book says and go, well, kid didn't turn out good, don't know what to say. It's like, if what we're doing with our children isn't working, if my son or daughter's having trouble in school and the book says do X and X and X, and I do X and X and X, and it doesn't work, I don't go, well, screw that didn't work, I'm like, I'm in the game. I'm like, I'm finding another book. I'm finding someone else who can help. I am a father, or maybe you're a mother in this whole movement, and your prophetic ministry has to work. Like, there are things that work great on a whiteboard, or in my case, a blackboard, but they just actually don't work in life. There are ideas that we have that we get sometimes even from the Bible, and we're like, this is the way it works. 1 + 1 = 2. But I want to tell you, 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2 in life, because we're dealing with people. And I think it's really important that we build a culture of prophetic people. Let me tell you the rest of that story about Saul, because it's actually a very sad story. Saul becomes a king, and he really does have a heart after God, in the sense that he's not, he's super humble. And he wants to do the right thing. There's never been a king in Israel. I have a lot of grace for Saul. But here's the challenge. He got disconnected from his people. See, I don't think everyone just has a call. I think they actually have a people. I think that we have to stay connected. Saul loses touch with his people, the prophets, and he begins to get crazy. He begins to be suspicious, insecure, jealous, bitter. He's got David, who's like his number one guy, totally loyal, killing lions and bears, killing Goliath. And instead of being a father to David, he becomes an elder brother. He is actually competing with the person he's supposed to be leading. And when he comes back from killing Goliath, Saul, with all the armies, the women are standing on the side and they're singing, Saul has killed his thousands, and David has killed his 10,000s. Instead of celebrating like Jesus did, greater works will you do when I go to be with the Father. That whole idea that the people I'm mentoring, the people I'm discipling, the people I'm leading are actually supposed to outgrow me. My leadership is actually on display when the people I trained actually do better than me. Instead of thinking like that, Saul, again, goes back to his little s, small, and he begins to be afraid of David, and he begins to be intimidated by a guy who actually works for him, a guy who's actually making him look great. and he tries to kill David, and he tries to assassinate him. And this goes on for years, some say 17 years. But here's the interesting thing. In the midst of him chasing David, in the midst of him on this road to kill David, to assassinate David, on the way to kill David, when he's about to capture him, with all the armies of Israel after David, and 600 men or something, God does this amazing thing again. God sends Saul, the prophets, coming down from the mountains. And you know what happens? Every time Saul encounters the prophets, he is changed back into the man he was supposed to be. Every time Saul encounters the prophets, the people he's supposed to be with, the people he's called to be with, he rips his clothes and he begins to prophesy with the prophets until the Israelites go, is Saul among the prophets? I mean, they said it became a byword. Is Saul among the prophets? What happened? He got reconnected. The hand got reconnected to the arm, and he remembered his destiny. He remembered when he got to be with his people, he saw the vision clearly and who he was supposed to be. Unfortunately, that connection got broken, and Saul lived absent of the prophets. Instead of, as king, saying to the prophets, hey, every time I connect with you guys, I actually do really well. Instead of being wise and saying, hey, you guys, I need you guys in the palace. I need you guys in the palace with me, because when you're around, I'm connected with God. I'm my best. You bring out the best in me. No, he doesn't do that. He stays separate. He separates himself from the prophets. And that separation causes him to live as an insane man. Where are we going? We're not just building prophetic ministry. But listen, we are building a covenant community of prophetic people where we don't just give prophetic words. See, prophetic ministry can give you a word, but a prophetic culture can cultivate what you need to actually grow that word in you so that that word can actually be fulfilled. How many people have you met, if you're very old at all, that you've encountered? They're like, I don't believe in that prophetic ministry. I've gotten 10 words. They never come to pass. Yes, that's like taking your wallet and putting a seed. I put a mustard seed in here and I walk around saying, you know what? The guy told me I was going to have a mustard seed plant. It's never happened. I've carried this seed around for 20 years. I've carried a seed around for 20 years and nothing's ever happened to it. Have you thought about planting that seed? Have you thought about putting some soil around it? Have you thought about watering that seed? Have you thought about giving it some sunlight? And what I'm getting at is that I can take a seed, I can take that sperma, that word of God, and carry it around all I want in my pocket. But until I plant it in a community, it's not going to grow and flourish and actually become everything God wanted it to become, because it needs soil, it needs sun, it needs water, it needs a culture that can grow it. And I want to ask you a question like, are you connected? Because what I see, especially in this COVID condition that the world's in right now, I see this thing, I just like I told you, like I see this growing. Let me say this. I see two dynamics. I see the church, and I see this whole attack on the church. Well, the church should be open. The church they should stand up. They should stand up for what's right. And it goes on and on. It's like all the prophets like shooting at the church. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. It's easy for you to have an opinion when you actually don't have any people. And I got to tell you, I see most people, I was just watching someone you would probably know. I won't mention his name. I love the guy, but he doesn't have a church. He doesn't have anyone following him. And it's easy to have an opinion about something that you actually have no skin in. You actually have no investment. You actually don't own anything. So it's like they should and he should. And we become like the Monday morning quarterbacks telling the quarterback who has 11 guys trying to kill him, well, he should have thrown the ball over here. And why didn't he run that play? And why didn't he do it over here? Why did he fumble the ball? Yeah, you're not on the court. You're not on the field. It's easy for you to have an opinion about something that you actually aren't there. And you become a critic instead of a prophet. And what I'm getting at is we don't at this moment in time, I don't know that we need a whole bunch more prophetic words. We need prophetic fathers and mothers who can come in and create an environment. We create a culture that can actually grow something. Grow something. And I want to just exhort you, like you're in this school, this prophetic school, and I know that you're learning, and Julian's he's brilliant. And I know you're learning so much. The question is, like, do you actually have a place? Do you actually have a people? I've wrote this book, Destined to Win. This is, 5 years ago. And this book was actually, the foundation of this book, or maybe say the secret sauce of the book was, people are saying, what are you supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be doing with my life? And the book says, the crutch of this book, or the core of this book says, who are you supposed to be with? You're asking the wrong first question. Yes, once you find your people, then you can find your destiny. And yes, you have gifts, but those gifts actually have no purpose if you don't have a people. I finished that book, and it was out for a few months. And the Lord said to me, you missed one of the main points of destiny. Well, Lord, it would have been nice for you to tell me while I was still writing the book. He said, not only do you have a people, not only do we all have a people, but we also have a place. We also have a land. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, I will forgive their sins, and get this, I will what? I will heal their land. Not I will heal the land. No, I will heal their land. I will heal their land. When the children of Israel came out of Egypt, you know the story. Where were they going? They weren't going to a land. They were going to their promised land. I want to finish the next couple minutes by just saying, God said, you don't just have a people, you have land. Isaiah 62 says, and to your land will you be married. I want to really exhort you as a father in this movement, and as someone who deeply cares about what's happening right now in our countries, in our cities. So easy to talk against a governor that you've never met, a mayor you have no relationship with, a council person you don't know, a senator you've never met. Something completely different happens when you make a connection with the governor, the mayor, the senator, the teacher, the superintendent of schools. Something happens when you actually make a relational connection, and suddenly you may still not agree with their ways, but you have a sense of connection. You have a sense of, these are my people. Suddenly, it's like being a youth pastor like we were for years, and we told parents how to raise their kids before we had teenagers. And then we have teenagers, and all of a sudden we got 4 teenagers. And I have to tell you that our belief system didn't change, but our application very much changed. Like how you deal with children that are in your house, your teenagers who are in your house, feels very different than the way you told the Joneses to handle their situation before you had teenagers. And what I'm getting at is that we have to become a community. We have to become part of the church. We have to be part of our city. We have to stop throwing stones at the castle and start making friends with the king so that we can actually guide them, lead them, and create that womb of the dawn so that the prophetic declarations that we give to the governor, the senator, the teacher, the father, the mother, actually has a field, actually has a place it can root, someone who's pulling the weeds out, someone who's cultivating the soil, making sure there's enough sun but not too much sun, making sure that there's water, that there's not too much water, there's enough water. In other words, I can't just put a fire hose on it and think, okay, it needs water, there it is. No, it's like it actually needs thoughtful irrigation. I can't just say it needs the sun, I put it out in 110 degrees and I come back 3 days later, my plant is cooked. Well, you said it needed sun. It needs thoughtful sunlight. I can't just throw it down and think it's going to happen. It's not just principles. It's actually discipleship, fathering, mothering. And there's a culture built. It takes a village to raise a son sort of thing. We gather around each other and we're like, you know, I don't have everything my kids need. I have to expose them to people who I trust, who have what they need that I don't have. This is all part of creating a prophetic culture. And I believe this is what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to create a culture that becomes light in darkness and transforms our culture.
Hey, thanks for watching this video. It's part of my 12-session online school called Vox Day. Head over to voxdayschool.com to find out a little bit more about this and join us for our next live session.